everyone, it's Cindy. Welcome back to Studioloo. I'm here today with a flip through from another journal in the fairy journal collection. This is the Kitten fairies. This is a puzzle front cover, so this is a fairy puzzle that I have fully sealed and added to the front cover of a hand-painted vintage book with some brads, and on the spine you will see some beautiful hand-painted tulip lace. Here's a look at the hand-painted book. You'll see it's sprinkled with fairy dust and it's iridescent. And the tie is this vintage yellow seam binding. And you see all sorts of things hanging out the side. Here we have some hand-painted eyelet lace with a little fairy wing charm, some flowers and other bits and bobs. So let's get into this big book. So this is a large journal. The format of it is... the size of it, actually, it's quite large. It's a tall book. So it is just shy of 11 inches tall by just 8 3/4, or 7 3/4. So this journal has 2, 3, 4, 5 signatures. Couldn't remember there for a moment. So let's open it on up. So like the other journals in this series, when you open it up, there is kind of a common theme I'm using on the covers. I use beautiful papers. I create a tabbed pocket here, and then I add this vintage, I add an authentic vintage 1930s photograph. So this is of a woman standing there. I've added fairy wings to her, and there's a boat and an oar, so she's off to sea. And it says, "But a momentary traveler in the vastness." And I felt like that was a nice snippet for that photograph. And then in this tuck spot here, this pocket, we have a page from a vintage field guide of warblers. And they just tuck up in here. And then on this side, we actually have the vintage photo of Cicely Mary Barker, the author of The Flower Fairies and the illustrator. This is from the Fairyopolis book, and I've added a little butterfly here. Back here we have a Shirley Barber fairy, some avocado dyed eyelet lace, and inside is a beautiful large page from Fairyopolis. The back is like writing stationery, and this is one of the full pages. They were just so beautiful with this lily of the valley, and it has her journal entries, and it's all fairy related, that I felt like I just wanted to keep it whole and pop it right in here as a big writing space. And then this is sort of a collage page from the Shirley Barber fairy book, and I've added some hand-dyed marbled avocado dyed paper. It's a bit iridescent too. I've added some shimmer to it. This is cabbage dyed sunburst paper I've dyed with this little bird down here. Some stenciling. This is a macro photography image of an orchid. This is black walnut dyed paper with some woven fabric tab. This is from a coloring book page, and it's been watercolor painted, and it's like a little, it has like a packaging on the back, so it's a little writing space. And these are the butterfly kid fairies. They're super cute. When you flip the page over, there is a little pocket with a deer and some mushrooms, and then this little bit, it says, "It is said that the tooth fairy rewards children by replacing any teeth put under the pillow with a coin." And inside we have a page from a Japanese illustration, a Japanese fairy illustration. So you can write on, wherever you like, but it has these beautiful illustrations. It's just a really nice big book page. This is avocado dyed paper with a big piece of lace. This is a pocket. This is a project I created, these fairies. We've got little frogs down here, and then there's a lot of texture here with threads, and I've actually used glue to create fairy wings. Plastic. This was plastic that I melted. This was part of another project where we had to sort of recycle things. There are real oak leaves back here, sequins. This is a really special piece of ephemera that I've added as a pocket, and it's on this fairy paper. It's like a sparkly iridescent paper that's locally made. These are a couple of verses from the fairy flower fairy book, The Song of the Wild Cherry Blossom Fairy and The Song of the Pear Blossom Fairy. And then some washi and botanical collage. This is more black walnut dyed paper. This is a beautiful fairy digital. And then some fun digital paper, stenciling, a little cluster of blue fabric, squirrel pocket on a nice digital page with this collaged fairy journal card. Just a beautiful digital paper. This is a transformation tarot card from the Fairy Tarot. And then inside is Cicely Mary Barker postcard. And this is the Sweet Pea Fairy. More stenciling and beautiful digital papers. Just a little collage up here. This is a little acorn tuck pocket. And it has a couple pieces of little mini ephemera in here. And then clipped on here on this fairy paper that you'll see in a moment. So this is the this is a story essentially. So this is from a large book, and I collaged on it with some fun dyed papers, but I wanted to keep these beautiful illustrations because they're just really magical. And inside it's the story of the fairy's cake, and the whole story is here. And so there's lots of images and you can read the whole story. And then there's more writing on back with these beautiful fairies. I just had to keep this whole thing intact because it was so lovely. And so, yeah, it just clips on here and it's just beautiful. And it's a fun story to read. This is avocado dyed paper. More of those butterfly children fairies with their little mushroom umbrella. The Precious Time tarot card from the Fairy Tarot. This is black walnut dyed paper with a little bunny stamp. Macro photography of an orchid with some batik fabric down the side. Stenciling, cabbage dyed paper. This is a lace belly band up top with a little fairy stamp. And we have a little fairy and a bunny here. And then this is a journal card, some Shirley Barber fairies. A poem called The Flowers by Robert Louis Stevenson. We have fairies here and a little stitched leaf cluster. This is a painted page with, you know, a little fish and some flowers and a dragonfly, more stitched fabric. This is a little fairy stationery page. Some dyed paper. This is some fairy wing fabric. Little squirrel tuck pocket here with a unicorn and some bunnies from another fairy book, and then a couple things in there. The Inner Child tarot card from the Fairy Tarot, and then this little I Always Believed little fairy tag. And then this says, See above the fairy's head, Gelder roses, berries red. Some eco-printed botanical paper. This is a little tab pull-out spot here of some Shirley Barber fairies and some gilded stitching. Fairy dresses. Cabbage dyed paper with iridescent fabric tab. This is a little tuck spot with some fun trim. And a beautiful fairy art here. I love this little pine cone hat. He's playing a little flute and there's a little frog beside him. Not sure if you can see all the details in this page. It's quite deep with details. And then this is a little piece of stationery with these little flowers and bumblebees. And that just tucks on up in here. And then we also have a little tab with some fabric and a little stamp of this fairy. And this side some butterflies on a pocket, and this is some iridescent, I've gone over the wrinkles with this iridescent paste on avocado paper. This is an Amity Bloom layered tag with this lovely little fairy inside. Writing space on both on the back. Eco-printed eucalyptus printed paper. This is just a little cluster of fun fabrics on some black walnut dyed paper. Some beautiful fairy art from a book. This is the center, just more of this beautiful art and more. A little tab here with some fun fabric, more dyed papers, eco-printed. This is some shiny paper and fabric up here. This is a tuck spot of a big fairy, and then a cute little mouse nest with some vintage lace. And then we have a belly band that has some pine on it. It says, Far Beyond Her Tiny Wings. We have a little fairy there. And these are Eric Kincaid fairies with some tulip lace at the top. That just kind of overlaps there. Cabbage dyed paper. Fairyware. This is a verse by Shirley Barber. This tips out and has the Water Babies verse. More eco-printed paper. The Berry Queen. The Song of the Mountain Ash Fairy. Fairy wing paper. Avocado dyed paper with an Eric Kincaid envelope with a fairy on front. And inside we have a little, this little bit here. Just pull this out. There we go. And this little Eric Kincaid fairy. That will be easier to get out now. Just the first time it's ever come out of its little envelope. It was wanting to stay in there. There we go. A Fairy Voyage has a little tab here. This is a Japanese illustrator. Also this is as well. And then on to the next signature, we have some more fairy paper, this sparkly iridescent. It's locally made. And then this is like a little, I'm not sure if you can see the bird camouflaged right there, but this is like a little woodland tip out spot. And here we have, this is all underground. So you see tree roots and such. And then just some botanicals, the crocus fairies, stenciling and botanically dyed paper. This is a vintage page from an Enid Blyton book about fairies. Cabbage dyed paper. This is a little toad pocket, which of course is my favorite. And some collaging. And then this is a lovely fairy journal card. More collaging and a little girl looking out her window with some kind of magic out there. Some botanically printed paper with some star fabric down the side. Stenciling. Just some pretty fairy art. Stenciling and eco-printing. This is a little fairy pocket on a beautiful book page. Dreams of Flying, and this is a large journal card. The Fairy Bread verse and just some beautiful art. Cabbage dyed paper, a little pocket here with the Magical Gateway Fairy Tarot card and this little journal card. I love the faces on these mushrooms, they're so cute. Then another of those beautiful Raymond Shepherd illustrations from the Enid Blyton book. This is botanically dyed. This is a little bird tuck spot with some stenciling and this cute little fairy who's playing pipes and sitting on mushrooms. We have all these little fairies here. And then yellow sunburst paper that I dyed on the back. And some fun ribbon on the side. The U fairy, some stenciling. Fairy paper with this fun bird pocket. And these are Eric Kincaid Sunshine Fairy Babies. Big journal card. This is some beautiful handmade paper, locally made, with some flowers that I stitched down the side. And this super gorgeous fairy flip. This was from Happy Mail that I received from Mimi's Keepsakes, and it's just beautiful. Very hard to use, so if you get this journal, this is a treasure. And some botanically dyed paper with some sparkly fabric down the side. This is the introduction of the Flower Fairies book, and I thought it was a really lovely thing to include in this journal because the whole collection was inspired by Cicely Mary Barker's Flower Fairies. Talks about agrimony, alder, almond blossom, and apple. This is some avocado dyed paper. This is all Shirley Barber fairies. So the back page, the pocket, and the journal card. Just lots of fun. I love the little toadstool village. It's so sweet. And then more Shirley Barber and some of my dyed paper collage here. Cabbage dyed paper with eco-printed fabric down the side. This is a Shirley Barber fairy verse. The Rainbow Stairway, also Shirley Barber. Some of my dyed papers and stenciling. A little thistle tuck spot here. And this is a postcard of the Christmas tree fairy. Some beautiful fairy art with a kitty cat here, so appropriate because it's the Kitten Fairies book, and some avocado and vintage paper collage up top to write on. A little upper tuck spot to put things, and this big journal card of these fairies and little critters. Dyed papers and stenciling. This is a hand-painted page that I painted for writing space, and I just love this image. I essentially painted over everything else. So up here we have a little fun tuck spot that's got this these little tabs in it, sort of, and then some fairies under here. 12 o'clock fairy time by William Shakespeare. This is a little Shirley Barber cute fairy journal card with these little like acorn type hats. I thought that was adorable. Then we have some cabbage dyed paper, some Shirley Barber fairies here, and a little frog with a ladybug on his nose, so cute. Then this is avocado dyed paper with some vintage embroidered cotton here, and apple blossom, ash, bee orchis, beech tree, black bryony, blackberry, all from the fairy Flower Fairies book. This is eco-printed paper, and then this is like a little pop-out kind of card with journaling space here, and I've added a fairy here, and this is just a beautiful, beautiful card, and it's tuck spot. It's got little beads here. I don't know if you can see them. And then these are some Shirley Barber fairies, so it's a big journal card. And it's on hand-dyed paper with some stitched flowers here. And then another Shirley Barber. This is like a fairy ring, and we have a moth fairy here collecting all of these little amanita mushrooms. And on this side, more of the fairies from Shirley Barber. And I love this. It's like a spider has spun a web that looks like a lace tablecloth, and it kind of intermingles with the fairy wings. So I just did some painting and swirly gold gilding down here, and it made a fun page. Some of my sunburst cabbage dyed paper with this fun fabric on the side. This one's a little hard to see because it's like really light, but there's a fairy there. This is a cluster pocket with fairies, and this is a postcard of the Blackthorn fairy. Stenciling, cabbage dyed paper, the Go Outside from the Fairy Tarot, and this little fairy here, little rainbow fairy, and more stenciling. Macro photography of flowers, and some of my printed black walnut paper, and a little cluster of just some fun little fabric. Watercolor paper that's been botanically printed. You can see the little flowers here, and then we have a little tuck spot here with one of Amity Bloom's pocket tags and this little fairy. And then the center of this signature is this beautiful fairy playing a flute. More botanical paper and some black walnut dyed paper with this little fairy stamp. This is a little fabric flip, the Song of the Narcissus fairy. Some macro photography of flowers. This is a little tuck spot with a frog and a little leaf, and then some Chinese lanterns stenciled there, and these Shirley Barber fairies. Cabbage dyed paper, a little foresty kind of tuck spot. And there's actually a bear peeking out there. And then this is a beautiful moth fairy from Shirley Barber, and some stenciling down here. Some more journaling space. And then we have the Red Campion fairy, the Song of the Greater Celandine fairy, cabbage dyed paper, the Miniature World by Shirley Barber, the Fairies Ball, just a little bit of a collage on this fairy page with some yellow eyelet lace with this. This is the little fairy wing charm here. The Fairies Tree by Shirley Barber. Cabbage dyed paper. This is the entry page to Flower Fairies of the Wayside, and I've just added this fun paper on back. Little sparkly tab on this eco-printed paper. A little tuck spot here with botanicals and a little frog on fairy paper with a Shirley Barber journal card. Oops. And then a little bit of botanicals here and some hand-dyed paper. More of the beautiful macro photography of flowers, and cabbage dyed paper with some ruffle of fabric, beautiful digitals, and dyed papers. This is a little pocket here on some fun painty package paper, handmade paper, and these are Shirley Barber fairies, and these images actually go together. This is another fairy, the center of the signature. And then we have a little pocket down here, and this says the fairies flew off, and it's made with vintage gift wrap paper with Lily of the Valley, and it's an iridescent paper, more writing space on the back, some tea-dyed paper, and fun digitals, cabbage dyed paper. This is flower macro photography, danced and fluttered all afternoon. Some fabric here, and another macro photograph, more dyed paper. And then we have a little, just a little glued down decorative piece here to kind of make the page interesting. And then an over the top kind of journal card that is on this fairy paper. And it pulls out and you see the fairies and the birds, and the back is old scrapbook paper for writing on from like the 1920s from an old scrapbook. This is a little side tuck, the best times for seeing fairies, and it's on botanically printed paper, and we have Shirley Barber fairies in the journal card. There's some of the flowers there, you can see them. The horned poppy fairy, the song of the red campion fairy. This is some cabbage dyed paper, Shirley Barber fairies, a little tuck spot here on a collage page with this beautiful, these are beautiful botanical book plates. Just wanted to pop those in there as well. And then we're at the back of the journal, so we have a little tabbed pocket and more of that same paper we saw at the front. And inside we have the warblers here from the Vintage Field Guide, and a little pink butterfly journal card or ephemera, however you'd like to use it. So that is the end. We've reached the end of this big journal. So this is the second last one that I'm posting from the collection. It is the largest of all of these fairy journals in size. It's huge. So hopefully you enjoyed this flip through. If you're interested in this journal and you're seeing this video, it will be posted in my Etsy shop, which you can find linked down below. Have a great day, and thank you.